Hey guys, I am coming before you because I think that we all have just been so busy and so driven with our careers that the one thing that we have forgotten to do was to breathe. And I just shared this on X and I want to share it here too because I feel like it's very important and it's very vital. So come with me for a minute. Come and sit with me for a minute. Put away your busyness and just breathe. Just breathe. I want us to reflect. I want us to reflect on childhood memories, on the things that used to make us smile as children. And even though our years were hard and life was wrong, it hurt. Living didn't. And so today, I want to make this video because I feel it's important. We're so caught up, we're so driven that we forgot one of the greatest treasures in life, and that was to breathe and to live. And the best place to do that, I'm not telling you to stay stuck in the past, but is our childhood memories, the happy ones. And so take a deep breath and close your eyes and join me in my memories and have your own with me as well. Let me tell you something. I can hear us laughter. I can hear children's laughter in the summer years and the good years. I can hear us as children just being outside and laughing and playing and discovering and giggling and chasing one another. And I lived in the desert where I grew up from, and there were so many wonderful things that you can't experience any other way. I'm sure you all have your own experiences to remember and to reflect on that'll bring life back into your bodies. But short of the Messiah, who is the only way to live, but if that's not, your thing, I want to still encourage you to breathe. When we lived in the desert, it was amazing. The rare few happy moments we had because our lives, they were horrid and not lives that everybody could live. And so in reflecting, I'll share the happy things with you. So as little kids, we would chase one another out there, and we would learn how to hold horny toads, baby horny toads, and we would catch grasshoppers and we learned how to hold lizards and catch them, and the desert was so rich, full of experiences, and you had these beautiful sunsets. They were just reds and golds and purples and pinks. And then you would have the amazing sunrises of the oranges and the yellows, and just awesome memories in the desert where I came from. And I came from New Mexico, from Demi, New Mexico, and so the desert experiences were just awesome. And I also remember as a little girl, when it was so hot. Oh my gosh, it was so hot. But then the monsoons rolled in, the rains, and it was almost as if you could hear the desert. You could just feel the excitement in the air of the rain, and when the rains fell and it cooled down, you could feel the desert sigh. It's like you could almost just hear it sigh from relief, and you could see the cracks in the ground where it grown so dry fill in with the water. I remember watching the trees, their leaves drop like little drops of water into the footprints or whatever on the ground, and they would form little tiny puddles as I would watch and reflect them going. And then there were mirages. I mean, once all of this happened, you would have mirages of like bigger cities, or you would have mirages of another lake or something like that. And the desert was always fascinating. And after the rains, the rainbows, oh my goodness, the rainbows were intense. And the double rainbows were the best. And I loved it. And my dad grew these evergreen trees, which aren't supposed to grow in the desert, but you weren't going to tell him that. And so on the days that there were windy days, I loved the wind too, because when the wind blew, didn't like the sound so much, but when the winds blew and they blew through the trees, it was almost like you could hear the trees like come alive, like whispering and echoing, and just it was like the leaves were dancing and the winds were talking through the trees. And I loved it whenever after it rained and there was a wind, or after it snowed, and you would be walking through the rows of evergreens, and you would have the winds blow the drops on your face, and you could just smell the fresh pine. You could smell the beauty of life in each of those moments. And these are treasures, to be able to breathe and to live and to remember these things. And I always loved after the rains. Whenever there was hard times in our house, which was constant fighting and bickering as kids, we would go and explore the desert. And a lot of times in the riverbeds that were, now dry, we would find carnelians or arrowheads, or we learned how to tell how snakes would leave trails like waves in the sand, or come across coyote dens, or life we were living, or the smells of the mesquite bushes when the rains fell, and the ones with the pods were just the air was so sweet there, and the smell of sweet straw too in the blooming. And we learned as a kid that you could drink milk from a honeysuckle, and the stars were so bright in the desert at night. You could just see the stars. And then there would be the coyotes in the distance. You would always hear the coyotes. And desert was interesting. The only thing kind of grass that grew there was crabgrass. But I remember as a little girl, after it rained, of taking our shoes off and walking on the grass barefooted to feel the cold water up under the grass through the desert sands. And puddles would collect under our swing sets, and we would sit there and we'd swing back and forth and swing our feet through them and laugh. And just laughter was so innocent, the laughter of children. The years, the treasures of life, the treasures of living and breathing. I remember just so much. It was so full of living tarantulas. I learned how to make a tarantula dance, and they had these crazy weeds that were called local weeds, but when you stepped on them, they popped, and that was kind of fun, although it probably wasn't fun because it spread them. But at night, if we had a fire in the desert, how the darkness, the immense darkness, would glow orange with the bright of the fire. It was contained, but also I reflect on living, because each season had its own thing. Like, if we did get snow and it wasn't just windy, it would blanket the ground and it would silence everything, minus those few coyotes, but it would just silence you in, and it was restful. Winter is restful. It blankets and it covers for a reason, because even the seasons show you there is time to rest and there is time to live. And then whenever the springs came, you'd have all the winds, all the nutty winds, but the winds, they put me to sleep. And the monsoons, the lightning and the thunder and the rain, they all put me to sleep. I loved sleeping. Like, as a child, I could never relax, but those are one of the things that helped me to relax. The sound of the crickets, the sound of the frogs after the rain. We had treasures like even sand turtles. I don't know that everybody knows that the desert does have turtles. They're just sand turtles. And the smells. I can smell the summers and the falls of childhood, and autumn autumn, like late fall, early spring. I loved it there because of all the colors. Your trees, they still changed colors even in the desert. The golds were rich and the reds, and maybe not as up north, but you still had them. And it was beautiful. It was innocent, and I just loved fall. And I can smell the cool winds in the fall because the winds weren't hot like a hairdryer then. The desert, your winds get pretty hot. And so in the summer, when it was so hot and those winds were going and the monsoons hit, like I said, it was fresh air, just life. It would breathe in the rains, before they hit. You could smell them coming. And it's like you could hear the desert sigh with relief when they landed. And being children and chasing each other in the puddles and splashing and, you know, just living. We hear the coyotes and the smell of winter and the wood smoke, and we had a wood stove, so we knew wood smoke, and it was amazing. They were the best memories, even though our lives, they hurt. And we weren't children, we were adults before we were children, and it was harmful to us with how it was. But the days that there was screaming and yelling and fighting, or that there was no food, we would go out in the desert and we would just walk and roam the riverbeds, and we would find carnelians and arrowheads, and we learned to look for petrified, rocks holding things, and meteorite rocks. And it's just a time of beautiful childhood innocence. And I can just hear the laughter of the children in my ears. I can just feel the warmth of the sun, and the happiness of those moments. And guys, we're so driven by success. We're so driven by having to be busy that we have not stilled ourselves, and we have forgotten how to live. The one treasure above all things is childhood. The good times, the memories, and even if they bring up bad memories, inhale the good and exhale the bad. For every bad, bring up another good memory. Because we gotta live. We need to be living. And we can't be so success driven that we forget ourselves. We're so busy reaching for the next global thing that we forget who we are. We forget our essence. We forget the colors in living. There is colors in every life. We're all living and breathing colors and scents and fragrances, and every one of us carries a song. And the desert had its own song when the winds blew and the birds would go on, and there would be silence, and then the winds would pick up again, and the trees, the leaves were like they were talking. Guys, these are memories that will keep you young. If you forget the good times you had during childhood, and not every day was going to be bad. I know there are really good memories that everybody has. But I just want you all to think about breathing. Even if the only time you get is in your bathroom, close your eyes. Breathe in and exhale the busyness, and bring to mind a good memory. And for those of you who want more, Christ is in those memories, because He is behind every season, every tear, every laughter. And I was sharing on X how I remember one time we were sitting in church, my brother and I and my sister. We used to catch grasshoppers even when they were babies, because the older ones, they spit like tobacco juice all over. But my brother, he had carried a grasshopper in the church, and in front of us there was this lady who had her hair up in a bun, and somehow the grasshopper wound up in this lady's hair, and it was horrible the whole time because I saw it. And I looked at my brother. I was irritated with him. And we were trying not to laugh because the grasshopper was looking back at us and its antennas were just wiggling. And they were praying, but we were sneaking when we were doing this. And we were kind of going like that, looking, and it was so funny because we were wondering if the grasshopper was gonna jump even or crawl further into her hair or jump on the person next to her. And this was in church. Please, guys, don't forget the innocence of youth. Because in the long runs, those memories, they will help to keep your mind young and your heart young. You can be busy, but don't forget to breathe. Don't forget to set aside a moment. A moment echoes into eternity. And you can't hope to help others if you can't start with yourself first. Don't be so convinced that you need to reach global proportions, but be content in reaching for the small. Because in reaching for the small, you impact the greater good. Because you're becoming human again and not some driven machine. Even if it's just to look out the window, to stare out and let your mind wander for even a minute. Reflect on life, on the good things, because life is full of bad things. But if you do not forget how to breathe and live each day to the fullest, I can still hear the coyotes and can still hear the laughter of his children when it was raining and in the puddles, and we would play ring around the rosies. And if we fell down, we'd get wet, but it was fun. The smell of the mesquite beans when the rains hit, the winds that blew and seemed to talk through the leaves of the trees, the whispers that they did, the smells. Oh, we hung clothes out on the clothesline outside, and with the sun and with the smells, our clothes smelled fresh and good. It was alive. Let us not forget what being alive means. How can we reach out to others if we're still bleeding ourselves from being so busy for the next big thing? You can't. You have to breathe. And you have to learn to see the seasons. Every season comes with a scent. Every season comes with different daylight. Every season comes with different shadows. But just breathe and be. Take a breath. It's okay to rest. Just for a minute. Find your child again. The laughter of children in your ears, and reflect on those days. As you're reflecting on living. And life is one of the greatest treasures that we have. Minus the Messiah, who was all encompassed in that. There is beauty in everything. And I know there were times when we were in areas that would echo. My brother would go, echo, echo, echo. Anyway, you guys matter to me. Can we not be so caught up in depression and despair? Just for 1 second to even reflect on a childhood memory of sorts. Not every minute of your childhood was bad. I promise. Not all of it was. Maybe the majority was like ours. But if you breathe, and if you just learn to see light and to see life around you, it'll help you with your mind. It'll help you with just learning how to be alive and just learning how to live. That's what's important. Don't forget the good days, but hold them dear. Because in forgetting, we do nothing but we bring an early demise. And I don't want that for you. I want us to remember good memories. And we had moments that made us as children laugh. And there's so much bad that just wants to reflect and breathe in life. That's important. Life may be hard, but it's all you have. So don't forget the childhood. Don't forget how to live, how to hear, how to smell. You know, I remember my first book smells when I was a kid and I had learned to read, and I would walk into the library. Yes, I was a bookworm, but I loved the smell. You know, the smell of new classes starting, the erasers and the pencil, the childhood memories. While I didn't like school in itself because the kids were cruel and I never fit in, but there was good there too. And you know, the smell of freshly shaved pencils and erasers, that wasn't bad. Or when we can hear the oceans, you know, if you live by the ocean and you can hear the roar of the waves crashing on the beach or the seagulls. I know winter silenced the birds, and you never really understood how quiet it was until spring started, when their songs started coming back up again. Even your seasons tell you how to rest. But I am going to let you go, and I pray that you listen to me, and each day set aside time to just, even if it's a minute or two, to breathe in childhood. And is this aside from Bible reading and time with God? Well, you know, God is an encourager in all things, and encouraging excellent childhood memories to flourish that'll bring a smile to your face. I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I don't think our Messiah would be against the childhood memories, the good ones, because that's what he gave us a mind for. And that's who he is. He is the God of yesterday, today, and forever. And I'm not trying to push that. I'm just trying to push the whole breathing aspect of taking time and to start with yourself. Start with you. Learn how to breathe and learn how to remember and reflect the important things. But I'm going to let you go. I pray that each day will be blessed as you remember